My name is Isabella. I'm 36 years old and live in a quiet town on the outskirts of Denver, Colorado. I work as an accounting assistant for a medical equipment supplier, a stable, ordinary job that keeps me busy enough. Most evenings, I come home to our small, well-kept house, where I manage the little things that make up a life. No kids. No noise. Just me and my husband, Tyler. Tyler is also 36. He works as a sales team leader at a major real estate firm, polished, confident, and effortlessly charming. He always smells faintly of expensive cologne, always knows the right thing to say. To anyone else, we probably look like the perfect couple, stable careers, a tidy home, a marriage that's lasted years. But appearances can be cruelly deceptive. They don't show how cold this house feels when the laughter fades. Today was supposed to be special, June 12th. Our 8th wedding anniversary, and Tyler's 36th birthday. I took a half day off work, determined to make the evening meaningful. I drove over 30 minutes to pick up his favorite red wine, and stopped by a specialty butcher shop for a perfect cut of Wagyu short ribs. I'm not a great cook, but I wanted to try, to create something that felt like love again. By late afternoon, I had strung up soft lights around the balcony, laid out an ivory tablecloth, and arranged the silverware in careful symmetry. The custom cake I'd ordered sat in the fridge, a simple white one, smooth vanilla frosting, and a small message on top. To Tyler, happy birthday and anniversary. At 7 p.m., I slipped into my dress, touched up my makeup, dabbed on a little perfume, and waited. At 8 o'clock, I lit the candles. At 9 o'clock, I sent a message, I'm waiting. No reply. By 9:30, I called, 5 rings, then voicemail. At exactly 10:35 p.m., my phone buzzed. It wasn't a call. Just an email. From Tyler. Subject, sorry. Big client emergency. I have to stay at the office. We'll make it up later. No thank you. No happy anniversary. I set the phone down on the table. The candles had long since burned out, leaving faint trails of smoke curling into the air. The short ribs had gone cold. The cake sat untouched in the fridge. And there I was, still sitting in the golden light of the dining room, a folded napkin clutched in my hand, waiting for a man who had already left this marriage long before he ever left the office. I didn't cry. But something inside my chest shifted out of place that night, a quiet, invisible fracture. After staring at the cold candles for what felt like hours, I finally stood up. I boxed up the untouched meat, sealed the wine, took down the balcony lights one by one. The ivory tablecloth was damp where the wax had dripped. I wiped it clean, folded it, and put it away. No one had enjoyed the dinner. There was no one left to celebrate with. By midnight, I lay in bed still wearing the wrinkled dress I'd chosen for the evening. The perfume on my wrist had faded to something sour. I closed my eyes, but that short, sterile email kept slicing through my thoughts like a dull blade. Sorry. Big client emergency. It wasn't the first time Tyler had stayed late. Not the first time I'd waited until my body ached and my eyes burned. But this time felt different, heavier, colder, as if something unseen had shifted between us. There was a strange instinct pressing against the edges of my mind. A whisper. A chill, creeping unease that felt like a draft slipping through a closed window. The next morning, I got up early and went to work as usual. My coworkers chatted about weekend plans and the new client account, their voices distant, muffled, unreal. All day there was no message from Tyler. No text, no call. Nothing. By noon, the silence had become unbearable. I called him, 5 rings, voicemail. Again. Again. Each attempt felt like throwing a stone into a well with no bottom. Finally, I dialed his office. The receptionist answered, her tone polite but uncertain. Hi, could you connect me to Tyler, please? I asked. A pause. Then, softly. Oh, I'm sorry. He actually resigned 3 days ago. For a moment, I couldn't process the words. What? Yes, she said, voice faltering. He didn't leave any forwarding information. I stood frozen in the hallway outside my own office, the phone still pressed to my ear. The world tilted slightly, and the air around me thickened. My heart began to pound, hard, hollow beats echoing in my ribs. Memories flooded my mind in disjointed flashes, the distant looks, the late nights, the half-hearted excuses. And suddenly, I understood. It wasn't about work. It was never about a client. Tyler hadn't been busy. He had been leaving, piece by piece, long before I ever noticed. And now he was gone. After work, I drove home as if through water, every turn of the wheel heavier than the last. The sun was setting behind the mountains, the sky fading to the color of old bruises. When I reached our third-floor apartment, I hesitated before unlocking the door. Inside, everything was too quiet. The air felt stale, almost foreign. My eyes went straight to the shoe rack, and I saw it immediately, an empty space on the second row. His favorite brown leather shoes were gone. "Tyler." I called out, my voice catching in the silence. No answer. I hurried to the bedroom, and there he was, standing in the middle of the room beside an open suitcase. Clothes were thrown hastily into a duffel bag. A navy suit, a tie, a pair of brand-new dress shoes still with the tags on. He didn't look up right away. And in that quiet, suspended moment, I realized the truth I'd been avoiding for months. Tyler wasn't packing for a trip. He was packing to leave me. He was packing clothes I'd never seen him wear to any regular meeting, the navy suit, the polished shoes still with their tags, crisp shirts folded with mechanical precision. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice barely steady. Tyler looked up at me like I was a stranger who'd wandered into his space. "You're back," he said flatly, then turned back to his suitcase. I took a hesitant step forward. "Where are you going?" "Next state over," he replied casually, as if it were nothing. "I've accepted a new job in Albuquerque." For a moment, my brain refused to process the words. "You quit your job? And didn't think to tell me?" He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his duffel bag, pulled out a slim folder, and placed it on the table. He opened it, the papers sliding into view, the first page stamped with bold, unmistakable letters. "Petition for dissolution of marriage." I stood frozen. "Tyler, what is this?" He looked at me with eyes like cold steel. "You're no longer the wife I need." My breath caught. "What are you talking about?" His tone sharpened, every word deliberate. "You always put work first. The house is dusty. You only cook on weekends. You don't care about me anymore." Something in me snapped. I gripped the papers so tightly they bent under my fingers. "I tried, Tyler. You come home late, saying you already ate. I cook, and you ignore it. I clean, and you tell me not to touch your desk. And now you blame me for not fulfilling my duties." "Don't bring up petty things," he shot back, his voice rising. "You just make excuses. A real wife doesn't need reminders." A bitter laugh escaped me, raw and shaky. "You talk like I sit around all day. I work too, Tyler. I pay half the rent. But no one cooks dinner for me. No one asks if I'm okay. And I never complained." His jaw tightened, eyes narrowing. "That's your choice," he said coldly. "I've made mine." He zipped the suitcase, the sound slicing through the silence like a blade, and started toward the door. "I rented an apartment near the new job. I start next week. Don't get in my way." I stepped in front of him, blocking the doorway. "That's it. No apology. No explanation. After 8 years of marriage." He didn't even flinch. "I don't owe you anything." And with that, he brushed past me. The door clicked shut behind him, soft, final, and merciless. Like the slam of a courtroom gavel. I stood there for a long moment, then my knees gave way. I sank to the floor, the divorce papers still trembling in my hands. The apartment around me felt hollow, stripped of warmth, stripped of us. 2 days later, the phone rang. "Mrs. Isabella," said the voice on the other end, the building management office. "We just received a request to transfer the lease. The current leaseholder has requested to terminate the contract." For a moment, I couldn't speak. My eyes fell to the shoe rack again, that empty space on the second row, and I realized Tyler hadn't just left the apartment. He had erased me from his life, piece by piece, until there was nothing left but silence. I froze. "What did he say?" I asked the woman on the phone. She hesitated, then replied softly, "He left a note, ma'am. Just one line. I no longer live there. The person staying behind will clear out and move before the end of the month." No discussion. No message. Just that. That night, I sat in the quiet apartment, the walls still carrying the faint echo of his absence, and opened the drawer of our old desk. Inside were the receipts for nearly everything we owned. I flipped through them slowly, the sofa, the dining table, the fridge. All under my name. He'd taken only his clothes, a few small gadgets, and the watch I bought him on our 5th anniversary. Tyler had left like a stranger walking out of a hotel room. But it was that very coldness that finally woke me up. I looked around the apartment, everything still there except the marriage. I didn't sign the divorce papers right away. They sat on the dining table for 3 days, unmoving, like a wound that hadn't started bleeding yet. Each time I walked past, I stopped and stared, as if a reason might appear between the cold, typed lines. But the more I looked, the clearer it became. There was no reason. No hidden betrayal. No secret explanation. Just Tyler's brutal, wordless exit. When he walked out that night, something in me broke, but not in the way I expected. It was quieter, almost peaceful, like a curtain finally lifting after years of dull light. That Saturday evening, as I scrolled through my phone out of habit, a notification popped up. 18-year high school reunion, Moonlight Brewery, downtown Denver. I had once looked forward to it. I'd even paid the reservation fee a month ago, back when I imagined showing up with Tyler, hand in hand, the picture of a stable couple. I thought we'd laugh, share stories, maybe look at others with a silent pride that we had made it. Now, it was just me, and the hollow ache he'd left behind. I almost didn't go. But then I caught my reflection in the mirror, tired, yes, but still standing. There was still something in my eyes, a trace of dignity I refused to lose. So I got dressed. A simple black dress. Wine-colored lipstick. Hair pulled back neatly. Not to impress anyone, but to remind myself I still existed. That I could still walk into a room without flinching. Moonlight Brewery was just as lively as I remembered, laughter spilling out onto the street, the low hum of conversation, the clinking of glasses against polished wood. The scent of beer and nostalgia mixed in the air. At first, I felt out of place, like a ghost wandering through the laughter of the living. But then, amid the crowd, a familiar glance caught my eye. I stopped. Someone was looking back at me. "Hey, Isabella." I turned. It was Nathan, the guy who used to play bass in the school band. He looked older now, with a trace of stubble, and the kind of calm that only comes from surviving a few storms. "I almost didn't recognize you," he said with a warm smile, handing me a beer. "Still the last one to show up, huh?" I couldn't help but laugh softly. Some things never changed. We found a small table tucked away in the back, where the music was softer and the crowd's laughter faded to a hum. Nathan told me about his life, divorced for 3 years, raising his 6-year-old daughter on his own. No bitterness, no self-pity. Just quiet honesty, the kind that only comes from people who have already seen what love can take and what it can't give back. When he asked about Tyler, I answered simply, "We're getting divorced." No tears. No explanations. No pity. Nathan gave a small nod, and without missing a beat, changed the subject. I was quietly grateful for that, for the mercy of normal conversation when your life has been anything but. Later that night, driving home through the cool Colorado air, I turned on the radio. An old song came on, "It's Not Right But It's Okay." Whitney Houston's voice filled the car, sharp and defiant. The lyrics hit like a punch to the chest. Memories surged, cold dinners left untouched, unread messages, hugs that had turned hollow. All those nights I'd told myself, "He's just busy. I should be more patient. I just need to try harder." But that night, with the highway stretching out before me and the city lights fading behind, the truth finally settled in. I had lived like a shadow, always finding excuses for someone else's absence, always softening the edges of neglect just to keep the illusion of love intact. The next morning, Sunday, sunlight slipped through the blinds as I made coffee. For the first time in weeks, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt clean. Then my phone rang. The screen lit up with a name I no longer wanted to see. Tyler. I hesitated, then answered. I've informed the leasing office, he said, his voice clipped, almost mechanical. We're terminating the contract by the end of the month. You should start packing. I set my mug down, my tone calm. You don't think you should have asked if I had somewhere else to go? You're an adult, he replied bluntly. Figure it out. I let a slow breath out, steady and deliberate. Good, I said. I'll sign. He stayed silent. And don't call again, I added. Don't talk to me like I'm still the one keeping your house in order. Still no response. So I hung up. No hesitation. No shaking hands. I sat at the table, the faint aroma of coffee still in the air, and let my eyes drift over the divorce papers one last time. Then, with the quiet finality of closing a long, rotted chapter, I picked up the pen and signed my name. I picked up the pen and signed my name, not a single tremor in my hand, not a single tear on my cheek. Just clarity. The kind that comes only after years of living in the fog of someone else's promises. Exactly 1 week after my attorney filed the divorce, an email arrived from Tyler. It was close to 10 p.m. The subject line read only one word, proof. I opened it. Before I could even register the first line of text, the image attached filled my screen, a crisp photograph of a marriage certificate. Groom, Tyler Robert James. Bride, Marissa Ellis Whitmore. County, Bernalillo, New Mexico. Date of registration, 1 day after our divorce was finalized. The red county seal glared at me like a wound. Before I could process what I was seeing, my phone rang. His name lit up the screen, Tyler. I answered. You saw it, right? His voice came through, disturbingly triumphant. I got remarried. Life's never been better. I didn't respond. I just listened, the same way I had for years, through his monologues and excuses. Her name's Marissa, he continued. 36, just like you, but she's mature, gentle. He paused, letting the words hang before twisting the knife. And she's so beautiful. You'd be jealous. Still, I said nothing. She's the only daughter of the family that owns the Whitmore Real Estate Group in Santa Fe, he went on, his tone slick with pride. Her parents built us a house near the Southern Hills. The job her family helped me get, executive vice president at their company. My fingers tightened around the phone. So that's why you needed the divorce so quickly, I said quietly. You'd already planned your next move. Not entirely, he replied, without a trace of shame. I just couldn't keep living with a woman who always put work first, who neglected her role as a wife. I let out a low, humorless laugh. And your new wife? She doesn't work, I assume. She chose to take care of the home, Tyler said, almost proudly. And he paused, drawing out the silence before delivering the final blow. We're expecting a baby girl. She's 3 months pregnant. I stared at the wall, my mind curiously blank. Somewhere in the distance, a car passed outside, its headlights sweeping briefly across the room before fading. His words echoed in the stillness, but they didn't cut the way I thought they would. Instead, they landed with a strange, hollow clarity, like hearing the end of a song that had been playing too long. Each sentence he spoke felt like a dull blade, severing the final thread that had once tied me to our marriage. But instead of pain, all I felt was a hollow stillness, the quiet after a long, violent storm. Marissa Whitmore. I repeated the name after hanging up, tasting the syllables like something bitter. It wasn't unfamiliar. I opened Facebook and typed it into the search bar. Her profile appeared almost instantly. The picture at the top showed a stunning woman, soft blonde waves framing a symmetrical face, sharp blue eyes, and a confident smile that could make anyone feel smaller just by looking at her. She looked like the kind of woman who belonged to the world Tyler always wanted to be part of. I scrolled through her photos, one after another. And then, on the 10th picture, I froze. No, it can't be. The woman smiling from the wedding photos, the one with the luminous skin and poised elegance, wasn't a stranger at all. She was Marissa Ellis. We'd gone to high school together. 3 years in the same hallways. Back then, she was scrawny, with uneven hair and blotchy skin from constant makeup allergies. Her nose was flat, her eyes slightly squinted when she smiled, and she had that one slightly crooked front tooth everyone used to tease her for, bunny teeth. She used to sit in the back of the classroom, always quiet, barely noticed. Sometimes picked on. Always shrinking from attention. But those eyes, I remembered them. The same pale blue, the same nervous habit of looking down when she walked. I reopened the wedding photo Tyler had sent in his email. The bride in that picture looked like an entirely different person. But no amount of surgery could erase those eyes, or that familiar smile that never quite reached them. I sat there, numb, staring at the screen until instinct took over. I grabbed my phone and called Lana, my closest friend from high school. "Do you remember a girl named Marissa Ellis?" I asked. There was a pause. Then a short laugh. "Remember her?" "Of course. I still have an old photo from senior year." "Why are you suddenly asking about her?" I hesitated, then told her everything about Tyler, the divorce, the new marriage, the Whitmore family, the house, the executive position that seemed to fall right into his lap. Lana was quiet for a moment, then sighed. "I'm not surprised." "Why?" "She changed completely after moving to New York," Lana said. "Studied art, went through a string of surgeries, chin, nose, eyes, even her jawline. Everyone called her Marissa 2.0. But personality-wise? Still the same. Quiet, calculating, and very strategic about who she latches onto." I said nothing. Just listened as Lana continued. "There was this rumor back in Brooklyn," she said. "She got involved with a much older, married architect. It caused a bit of a scandal. But then she disappeared for a while, resurfaced in New Mexico, opened an art gallery, and somehow started running in elite circles." Lana gave a short, knowing laugh. "Guess she leveled up." I didn't respond. I just sat there, staring at the faint reflection of my own face on the dark phone screen. Somewhere deep inside, a quiet truth began to take shape, the kind of truth that doesn't burn or sting but chills. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my living room, the glow of the lamp casting a soft halo over the photograph on my screen, Tyler and Marissa's wedding picture. Everything in the frame sparkled. The white roses, the crystal chandelier, her pristine gown, his polished smile. Even their happiness seemed choreographed, as if perfection itself had posed for the camera. But I knew better. Behind all that shimmer was an image carefully engineered, layers of makeup, an expertly constructed facade, and a motive buried deep beneath that smile. And he chose that. 1 week after Tyler's smug phone call, I received a message from an unknown number. "Isabella, are you free? I need to talk. It's serious." I didn't need to ask who it was. I knew immediately. I ignored it. 15 minutes later, my phone rang. I shouldn't have picked up, but something inside me whispered it would be worth it. "Marissa gave birth," Tyler said the moment I answered. His voice was flat, shaky at the edges. "A baby girl." There was a pause, a hollow kind of silence, filled only by the sound of his breathing. "I see," I said evenly. She doesn't look like me," he continued. "Or Marissa. Actually, she doesn't look like either of us." I pressed my lips together to keep from laughing. "Maybe she takes after someone from your side of the family," I offered, my tone light, almost playful. "No, I thought that too." But his voice faltered, then sharpened. "Isabella, do you remember when you laughed? That night, after I told you about Marissa being pregnant. You knew something. Didn't you?" I leaned back in my chair, the corner of my mouth curving into a small, deliberate smirk. "I just found it interesting," I said softly. "Stop joking." His voice cracked with panic now. "I did a DNA test. The baby's mine." "I know that. But I still don't understand, she doesn't look like either of us." "I haven't told anyone, but you laughed like you knew something. Please, just tell me." A low chuckle escaped me before I could stop it. "Do you remember your high school graduation album, Tyler?" He didn't answer. "I found it while packing up the old apartment," I continued, my voice steady, almost gentle. "It was buried in the bottom drawer of your desk. Covered in dust." He exhaled sharply. "You were digging through my stuff." "No," I said, my tone cooling. "Just cleaning up what was left of it." There was silence on the line, that kind of silence where you can hear the other person's heartbeat through the air. And for the first time in years, I felt something close to satisfaction. I was cleaning, I said evenly as you requested. There was a faint rustle on the other end of the line. I continued, and when I opened that album, I was stunned. A curly-haired boy stared back at me, squinty eyes, crooked teeth, acne scattered across his cheeks. It took me a few minutes to realize it was you. Tyler exhaled, a slow, uneven breath. I always wondered, I went on, why in 8 years you never introduced me to your college friends. Why our wedding was so small, why there wasn't a single teenage photo in our home. Now I understand. I changed, he said quietly, his voice almost defensive. Out of insecurity. No, I replied. You changed because you wanted to live a new life. You wanted to bury the old one. But you forgot one simple truth. I paused, letting the silence stretch just long enough. Genetics can't be edited. A heavy quiet settled between us. I could almost feel his discomfort, the sound of his breathing uneven through the line. You think I'm ashamed of who I was? He asked finally, his tone brittle. No, I said softly. I think you're terrified of being seen. And I feel sorry, not for you, Tyler, but for an innocent child who's going to grow up between two people who couldn't even be honest with themselves. He said nothing. You hid your past, I continued. So did Marissa. And now you're both shocked that your daughter doesn't look like the versions of yourselves you constructed for the world. There was a sharp inhale on his end. You think she's going to look like that old version of me? His voice wavered, almost breaking. No one knows, I said. But she'll carry what's real, your blood, your DNA, everything you've tried to erase. The truth always finds a way to resurface. He fell completely silent. After a long pause, I asked, what about Marissa? His voice cracked. She cried. Said she was exhausted from labor. But you know what's worse? What? She won't hold the baby, he whispered. Every time she looks at her, she turns away. Yesterday, her mother had to take the baby because she refused. I don't know what to do. For a moment, I didn't say anything. The weight in my chest wasn't for Tyler, it was for that child. A baby born into a house full of mirrors, where love was conditional and identity had to be earned. When I finally spoke, my voice was low, steady. You once said I failed as a wife because I wasn't willing to sacrifice. But the one rejecting his role as a father is you. He sighed, a small, broken sound, maybe about to speak again. But I stopped him. You don't need advice from me, Tyler, I said quietly. Just don't project your shame onto that baby. She deserves to grow up without carrying the ghosts you and Marissa created. And before he could reply, I ended the call, leaving him alone with the sound of his own silence. She hadn't done anything wrong. I ended the call before he could reply, then blocked his number. There was nothing left to say, nothing more I needed to hear. Nearly a year passed after that final conversation with Tyler. His presence had faded from my life, not because I forced myself to forget, but because the life I built afterward filled every empty corner he'd left behind. I moved into a small apartment in Boulder, just a 10-minute walk from the office. The balcony overlooked the green hills, and the morning sun poured in gently, enough light to keep my small pots of basil and rosemary alive. For the first time in years, mornings didn't feel like something to survive. I woke early, made coffee, and breathed without that familiar weight pressing on my chest. I kept my job but reduced my hours, choosing balance over burnout, purpose over performance. I no longer chased the life I thought I should have, the house, the status, the constant proving. Instead, I learned to be still. On weekends, I joined a local art class, charcoal, paint, and messy palettes that stained my hands but somehow felt like freedom. I reconnected with old friends, one of them being Nathan, the bassist from high school who'd once made me laugh through a night that might have otherwise broken me. We didn't tie each other down with promises or expectations. Just quiet afternoons, coffee dates, long walks along Pearl Street, two people who had learned the value of peace after chaos. I never checked on Tyler. I didn't need to. But life, in its strange and poetic way, always finds a method of updating you about the people who once stepped out of it. One early autumn afternoon, I ran into Lana at a used bookstore downtown. She was flipping through a worn poetry collection when she spotted me. After a few casual greetings, she leaned closer, lowering her voice. You haven't heard anything about Tyler, have you? I shook my head slightly. No. Why? Marissa's looking for a divorce attorney. I raised an eyebrow, unsurprised. Really? Word is Tyler cheated again, Lana said. With a new hire at his wife's company. Marissa found out 3 months ago but kept quiet for the child's sake. Their daughter? I asked softly. Lana nodded. She's almost 3 now. But it gets worse. She pulled out her phone and showed me a screenshot from a friend in a local preschool parents group. The message read, "There's a new girl in class. Her mom had full plastic surgery, the kids found out somehow and started teasing her, saying your mom used to be ugly." I stared at the screen for a long moment. It wasn't anger I felt. Or satisfaction. Just a quiet ache, for the child who was already learning what her parents had spent their whole lives running from. I closed the phone gently and handed it back to Lana. Some lessons, I murmured, pass through generations whether we mean them to or not. Outside, the wind carried the faint scent of fallen leaves and roasted coffee. Somewhere in the distance, laughter echoed, unbothered, unburdened. And as I stepped out of the bookstore, the light touched my face in a way that felt like something new. Not healing, not closure, just life continuing as it should. The poor thing cried all week. I stared at Lana's message, my heart sinking. I no longer cared about Tyler or Marissa, they had become shadows in a story that no longer belonged to me, but the thought of a child being bullied for choices that were never hers broke something inside me. Sadness and anger twisted together, not for the parents, but for the innocents caught in the wreckage of their vanity. Marissa regrets having the baby, Lana added softly. She thought the child would inherit her post-surgery beauty. But now, it's clear the girl carries her original features. I said nothing because there was nothing left to say. Tyler and Marissa had once built their lives like a stage set, polished, glittering, carefully constructed for admiration. They chased perfection, the perfect marriage, the perfect image, the perfect lie. But no matter how artfully they tried to bury it, the truth, their truth, had a way of resurfacing. And it did, in the most innocent reflection of themselves, their child. When the call ended, I slipped my phone into my bag and stepped outside. The late afternoon air was soft, gold spilling through the trees that lined the park near my apartment. I picked up a small croissant from the bakery and strolled home, the light filtering through the leaves in shifting patterns. My life now has no drama, no grand revelations or cinematic twists. But it has rhythm. It has peace. It has me. I wake up without dread. I work enough to live, not to exhaust myself. I cook simple meals, read before bed, and let silence fill the spaces where chaos used to live. I no longer crave validation or chase after something to fix. For the first time in years, I live with ease, and that, I've learned, is its own kind of luxury. Sometimes, I still reflect on everything that's happened, 8 years of marriage, a sudden divorce, betrayal that once burned like acid, and the unmasking that followed it all. But there's no bitterness left in me. Only gratitude. Because that collapse, painful as it was, became my rebirth. I wasn't reborn into someone new, just into the person I was always meant to be. No compromises. No pretending. No shrinking to fit someone else's idea of enough. If anyone ever asked whether I've forgiven Tyler, I'd probably smile and say, I don't need to forgive anyone. I just needed to remember who I am. And for the first time in years, I can say that without hesitation. Isabella's story, my story, is proof that appearances can fool the world, but time always tells the truth. And when that truth finally came, it didn't destroy me. It set me free. She never sought revenge. She never begged for closure. Instead, Isabella did something far more powerful. She walked away quietly and rebuilt her life from the inside out. She chose peace over pride, truth over illusion. While others tried to sculpt perfection on the surface, she learned that real transformation begins within. In the end, those who lived behind masks were forced to face the consequences of their own deception. The lies they crafted with such precision eventually turned on them, unraveling the perfect image they had once worked so hard to maintain. But Isabella, she found freedom. She found peace. And most importantly, she found herself. Something no amount of cosmetic surgery, wealth, or social status could ever buy. Because true beauty doesn't come from reinvention, It comes from authenticity. And the moment Isabella stopped trying to be what others expected, she became everything she was meant to be. Sparkles, what do you think of Isabella's choices and the downfall of those who lived a lie? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful, thought-provoking stories about family, truth, and self-discovery.